Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the iFlight Alpha A75 HD. HD as in DJI or the Caddx Vista, as well as the Caddx Nebula version 2. Got Jim Fan tri-bladed 40mm props, running on Zing 1103 8000 kV motors. The all-in-one board down here is the iFlight 6X-D 20-amp Whoop F4 all-in-one, which has a burst amp rating of 25 amps. I use the DJI controller, but you can get this with FR Sky as well as TBS Crossfire. It comes with two USB cables, one to connect to your all-in-one flight controller, the other one to connect to your Caddx Vista. Get some extra screws and nuts in case you lose one. Note they do have thread locker on them. Get an extra set of props. We get two battery mats, but really only this one would fit. As you can see, the battery spacing down here is pretty small, so this would have to be the one I'd use. Of course, if you lose that one, you could cut this one down to use it as well. Comes with an extra battery strap. Comes with a little wiring map on the 6XD Whoop board. Little card to tell you the prop directions. Caddx Vista manual. And two sheets of stickers. It weighs almost 71 grams. I flew it on the recommended battery, a 3S 450 milliamp battery, which brings the weight up to just over 111 grams. Motor post to motor post, I'm getting 77 millimeters. Okay, so we're going to do one of my favorite things, which is to fly inside. I like flying inside because, well, we do have the space for it. And I can always do it. Doesn't matter what the weather's like. Doesn't matter if it's hot, cold, windy, rainy. I can always fly inside. So we take it for a spin around inside the house. On that battery, I get about 3 minutes on most flights. So if you're looking at the flight time, inside or out, it's generally going to be around 3 minutes. Depending upon your flight style, how much vertical change, how hard you are on the throttle, it's going to vary quite a bit. But you can go along the timeline in this video, of course, to see, how much flight time I do get. We also are going to have an outside flight time. And one of the things that pleased me about this is, it's for a Whoop, it's heavy. But again, just like with the Unicorn, there are a host of people out there, and maybe you're one of them that got started with DJI-based quads, and so now you're looking for something that's smaller. Maybe you're looking for something that's DJI-based or Vista-based, and you can fly it inside your house or a gym or somewhere else when the weather is bad. This is one I can recommend. The Unicorn, I did not. If you didn't see that video, you don't need to watch it. The Unicorn did not fly well outside at all. It did fine inside, but outside it was not good at all. This one's more suitable for inside because it is smaller. You won't be able to shoot those tiny gaps you might think of like we do with analog Whoops because of the height, it just doesn't make it through a lot of those smaller gaps. Just the physical dimensions make it really hard or impossible depending upon what your gap is. But for flying inside, if you just want to have some fun, yeah, it does great. I had a really good time flying this inside. I flew it a lot inside because weather's always better inside, and I can always get all the flights I want to get in with a quad inside. Before I publish a review, I tend to fly these things, somewhere between 30 to 50 flights before I put my recording of the review together and get that published, so this makes it a lot easier for me. Outside, I flew it mainly on days it was pretty dang calm, and I thought it did relatively well. It did way better than the Unicorn, but not as good as the Sinlog 25. Of course, the Sinlog 25 is a bigger propped and a bigger quad, and it has more weight, so it's going to be able to handle more winds a little bit better. But this one did a surprisingly good job in the wind that I did fly it in. The image outside is not rock stable still, so we'll need to take a look at that. So if you're looking to do any sort of sim whooping or using the DJI or Vista system in order to get your shot, it doesn't work out great because there is a little bit of movement within the video. Okay, we're outside. Hopefully you can see that tree. It's moving slightly. My records indicate that this was a single-digit mile-per-hour day, so somewhere around 9 to 10 miles an hour probably, if you include the gusts, because there are little puffs of gusts that will come up, during the time, and you may be able to hear it on the microphone. It's actually a camera that I have sitting on the table. It's how I record everything. I took that slower pass so that you could take a close look at the stabilization of the video. Especially along the fence line, I think it was one of those areas where you could have looked at it to see how stable it was. There is some minor movement in there, so if you're looking at it on a small screen, say you're watching on mobile or something like that, you may not have noticed that, but there is some movement. Some of it could be digital shimmer from the camera, but there does seem to be some movement in the camera when you're flying it around. Not much. I mean, obviously it looks pretty dang good to me, but if you study it, I think you'll find it. If you're watching on a larger monitor, it's probably a lot easier to see, but it is way better than the Unicorn. I hate to be putting the Unicorn down so much, but that's one of the reasons why this appeared even before my review in that Unicorn video. And since the Unicorn video, I have been asked a few times what is the best, smallest DJI or Vista based quad on the market, and I'd have to say this one, because I'm not aware of there being a smaller one. I know that iFlight makes an 85 millimeter version, and I think Beta FPV did a couple that are similar. I think Beta FPV also make them naked, which makes me think that the Vista warranty probably isn't in place. But so this is the one I've gotten an opportunity to fly. This is one of several I've gotten an opportunity to fly, and I was pretty impressed with it. I was impressed with the tune. You just kind of point it in a direction and you go. You can see from time to time the wind is kind of sliding me around a little bit, but not enough to make it impossible to do that close proximity stuff through the swing set. So it does wash out. That's something else that you have to keep in mind. Yaw wash out is what we tend to call it, to where if you're doing a dive and you do it from a height of a particular sort, then you get to this some sort of like terminal velocity or something to where the quad will pitch up and yaw usually in one direction or another. And there it was starting to do it, but we got down to the end of the dive. So hopefully you saw that how the nose came up, and even though I was bringing the nut up, the nose came up a little bit suddenly, and then it yawed around to the right just a touch. So if you're doing dives, that's something you need to be aware of. But for this weight, I was really surprised it didn't do it on just about every dive and didn't do it dramatically, because we've seen much lighter whoops do that sort of thing. And up next will be some LED gate flying inside without audio. I just thought we'd look at this for a minute or so. This is during the daytime. You can look through the windows and you can see it's during the day. I do have the lights off in the basement. This is just me having some fun. No kids around. They're back to school for the most part. And so I just took the opportunity to charge up the USB battery banks and have a little indoor LED gate fun. These gates are from Mobility Gates, mobiligates.com. Billy as in the name. M-O, not mobility. I made a video where I said that continually wrong. My apologies there, but good gates. I keep them around and they're easy to pop out. Also, We Bleed FPV. They have some high quality gates as well. They're circular gates. So check out We Bleed FPV if you're looking for gates, or mobiligates.com. Both have good gates. Of course, in this video, we're just looking at the mobility gates. But this was me just doing some more challenging flight. I think gates help to bring in a different sort of element to a small space. You can see I'm only using those really 3 rooms. Oh, and I'm going to crash out here, and there was lots of crashes during my flights. Okay, so we're back to the point where we kind of talk about deficiencies. One is the antenna. It slides around, and it does have a propensity to come out of here, and then it can lay over in a prop or something like that. So if you have one or you buy one, add a little bit of adhesive, or you could take a little bit of tape and wrap it around this section to make sure this doesn't come out. I don't have a problem with the mounting. It just doesn't stay put. And because of the length of the antenna wire, it can get down into that. That actually happened to me several times where I was in the house, I'd had a crash, and then I was trying to take off, and I could hear something hit the props, and I was like, oh no, because one of the things I tell everybody is if you're going to use turtle mode, especially on micros, you got to be sure the props can spin freely. This does have a 20 amp board in it, but you are running 3S. The board should be good and hardy. And I've been flying it I was flying it during the Unicorn video. That's why it could make an appearance in the Unicorn video. And I mentioned its height, so by the time you get a battery down in here, it's much taller than a traditional Whoop. Even if you look at another 75 millimeter Whoop like this one, this is actually a shark bite Whoop. It's substantially taller, so getting it in tiny little gaps, while it might be manageable depending upon how tiny the gap is, you've got some height there that you have to be able to work with. But as far as flying it inside, it does work out very well. Other deficiencies, the camera, I don't seem to be able to lock it in. It's probably because it's plastic, and if I really hunkered down on the screw, I'd end up probably tearing up the plastic housing. So that's a possibility that you know, I could do some damage there. There's not much we can do about that. It's just something that I noticed is that when I'd have crashes, my camera angle would change, and I would take some time to tighten the screw back up. But I didn't want to get heavy-handed because, again, I didn't want to pull the screw through the plastic or damage the plastic and make it weaker, and then I get a shaky, wobbly image. We, of course, don't have really any camera protection, so it's going to take hits if you hit stuff with it. I crashed it a bunch. I didn't have that issue, but it's there. There is no camera protection. We don't see that. We see that a lot when it comes to whoops, that the camera's just sticking out. Pretty much, well, there are a few whoops out there that have camera protection, but not many anymore, especially because we want such wide camera angle on whoop. A little tip about how I mount my battery. So I put my battery lead in here like this, and then I would put my battery like this. Try to do this quickly. So I'd have this tucked away, and I would twist this to grab a hold of my balance lead, and then I would tuck it in and plug it in. That keeps the balance lead out of the possibility of getting up in your props. That's always something that I don't think I've talked about before, but so if you've got a multi-cell battery, that might be something you want to do. I did not use the battery pad that it shipped with. I didn't have any problems with the battery coming out, showing you like I did. Note the different screws, or the screws that we have. We've got 4 screws in each motor, and then we've got our mounting screws for our whoop board, and then we've got our mounting screws for the canopy. So if you wanted to swap frames for whatever reason away from this one, you're gonna have to find something that's got these outer mount screws, which maybe Beta FPVs has something like that. I'm not certain, but and then we also have this slot in the strut here for your motor wires to go down there. And those are soldered on, so they're not connector based. They're soldered on wires. Those 1103 8000 kVs. Of course, we've got the connector here. That's right for our Vista, so that makes everything pretty clean and pretty simple. There was no need for me to get in the canopy, binding everything up, setting everything up. Very accessible. You know, you've got your USB port right here, and then we've got our wires if you were to need to get to them right there. Where did the button here? I can't see it through the camera viewfinder. Where's the button at? Oh, it was right by USB. So our button that we press for binding to our goggles first, and then our radio second if you have one, right there. The Banggood website lists that this comes with HQ props as well as Gemfan props. I didn't receive any HQ props, so I don't know what that's all about. But I did get, and this could have been because it was sent for review, I did get an extra canopy and frame, but I didn't need it. As much as I crashed it and flew it around, canopy's and the frame is in good shape. It's remarkably durable for the amount of weight that it has to carry around. You know, I said it once in the video, as far as anyone out there asking what's the smallest, best Vista or DJI based whoop, it's this one, I think. In my experience, it's definitely this one, but of all of them that are out there, I bet you this has got to be a top contender. Surprisingly easy to fly for a 75 millimeter. Not easy to fly, surprisingly easy to fly. You know, I've been flying a long time, so you know, this is all relative. But you know, if you've got the skills, or you just want to take up the challenge and you want to fly on those days when you can't fly outside, I would just take a serious look at this. Of course, these don't come free or cheap. Depending upon the version you get, you can spend as little as $249. Of course, Banggood always has coupons and stuff. You can go. I'll list several websites down below that you can check the pricing out on if you care to look at it. Race Day Quads, I believe, carries these. We might see Get FPV and Pyrodrone down the list. I'll just look around to see who has this, and I'll put the names of the shop and then the links to the shop if you do want to check this out. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.